The first snow of December fell like sifted flour across the crooked roofs of Dry Creek, softening the edges of a town that had never been soft toward Clara Mae Hollister. She walked with her chin tucked low into her threadbare shawl, boots crunching on frost, each step echoing louder than she wished. The shop windows glowed amber with oil lamps, and behind the glass, folks lingered longer than needed, letting their laughter spill into the bitter air. They weren't laughing at anything in particular, though Clara knew well enough, when a soul carried the mark of poverty, every glance became a verdict, every chuckle a judgment passed. The cold nipped at her fingers where the stitching had frayed through her gloves. She clutched a small basket against her chest, carrying nothing more than flour and salt, yet it seemed heavy with the weight of every humiliation she'd endured. The general store's bell still clanged in her ears. Evelyn Carter had seen to that. Clara could still hear her voice, smooth as molasses but sharpened with scorn. Asterisk, why, Clara, those gloves have seen more winters than you have. Don't the moths get tired of chewing them? Asterisk laughter had bubbled around her like a pot boiling over, and Clara had stood rooted, cheeks burning, forcing herself not to flee too soon. She had paid her coin, gathered her goods, and stepped out into the falling snow with all the dignity a wounded heart could muster. The street carried whispers as surely as it carried wagon tracks. Even now, across the way, a pair of women leaned close, their eyes darting toward Clara before they spoke, behind mittened hands. Clara had learned to wear her silence like armor. Words spent in defense only sharpened the mockery. Better to keep walking, keep breathing, and hope her feet carried her to solitude before her spirit bent beneath the weight of their disdain. On the far edge of town, beyond the church spire and the frozen trough, her cabin waited. It was a crooked little thing, patched with boards of mismatched sizes, a roof that sagged under the snow's burden. To others it was a shack, but to Clara it was at least her own, for walls to keep the wind from her bed, a hearth where the embers tried their best to keep her warm. Tonight, though, she dreaded returning, not for the cold, but for the quiet. Loneliness had a way of howling louder than any winter gale. Halfway down the street, she paused as a shadow lengthened across the snow. A rider approached, the horse's breath pluming white in the lamplight. He sat tall in the saddle, broad shoulders draped in a coat of wolf-gray fur, hat pulled low against the wind. The townsfolk shifted as he passed, some stepping aside with murmured greetings, others falling silent, as though respect could not be spoken aloud. Baron Silas Mc Cade had returned to Dry Creek. Clara kept her gaze on the ground, though she felt his eyes upon her. It was not the first time she had seen him. His name was a weight in every conversation, his ranch stretching wider than most could imagine. Some claimed he owned half the valley, others that he owned half the law. To Clara, he was simply a figure carved from another world, one of wealth and distance. Yet tonight, in the hush of snow, she sensed a glance lingering longer than courtesy required. It was not pity, not disdain. Something steadier. Something she dared not interpret. She passed by without a word. Her breath clouded in the air, her heart unsettled. Behind her, hooves struck the ground in even rhythm, fading into the dark. The whispers would grow louder by tomorrow, she knew. Every eye in town had seen their paths cross. Already her shame gathered ahead of her like a storm. When she reached her cabin, she lit a lantern and set it near the window. The glass pane trembled in the wind. Inside, the room bore the smell of smoke and pine resin. She placed her basket down, unwrapped her shawl, and rubbed her hands near the low-burning fire. Outside, the world was vast and cold. Inside, it was narrow and fragile, yet it was the only refuge she owned. A knock startled her. She opened the door to find Jonas Reed standing there, shoulders hunched beneath a dusted hat, arms laden with cut wood. His beard glistened with frost, his eyes kind though tired. "Thought you could use a bit more for the hearth," he said simply, setting the bundle inside without waiting for thanks. Clara managed a small smile. "You'll leave yourself cold, Jonas." He shook his head. "Ain't about wood. It's about knowing a soul doesn't have to fight the wind alone. Don't let them break you, girl. You're worth more than their wagging tongues." The words struck deep. Worth more. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to let the warmth of his kindness seep into the cracks of her heart. Yet when the door shut and she was alone again, silence crept back in. She sat at the window, lantern light painting her face, and looked toward the town's distant glow. Laughter rose faintly on the wind, carrying the taste of ridicule all the way to her lonely hearth. She drew the shawl tighter, her breath fogging the glass. She could almost see her reflection looking back, tired eyes, hollow cheeks, hair pulled into a braid more practical than pretty. In that reflection was both fragility and something stubborn that had not yet broken. She wondered if anyone else could see it. And then, unbidden, the memory of that glance returned. The way Silas Mc Cade's eyes had found hers in the snowfall, steady and unflinching. A look that did not mock, did not pity. A look that suggested he had seen winters too, perhaps colder than hers. Clara closed her eyes and let the thought linger, even if it was foolish. The fire crackled low, the snow tapped against the roof, and the night wrapped her in its stillness. She did not know yet what tomorrow would bring, only that she would rise again, walk again, endure again. Dignity was not loud, and neither was she. But there was strength in quiet survival. And though the world outside jeered and whispered, within her chest a small ember still glowed, refusing to die. That ember, though unseen by most, was waiting for the wind that might turn it into flame. The days that followed fell heavy with whispers. Snow crusted over wagon ruts. Church bells rang dull through the frost, and all the while Clara Mae Hollister walked the same streets beneath the same stairs. Only now, when she passed, the murmurs carried a sharper edge. Someone had seen her near McCade's ranch. Another swore she lingered too long by his fence. The stories twisted like smoke, curling in every doorway, until they painted her desperate and shameless. Clara bore it, as she always had, shoulders squared, lips pressed to silence, but shame burned in her like a fever she could not cool. On one such morning, the sky bruised with a coming storm, Clara found an injured horse near the frozen road. Its flank was streaked with blood from a broken harness, its knees trembling as though it might collapse into the snow. She dropped her basket without thinking, moving to soothe it with steady hands. Her voice, low and gentle, murmured comfort, though she knew her words mattered less than her calm. The beast's eyes rolled in panic until she pressed her palm against its cheek, holding it there with quiet persistence. Breath plumed from both of them, mingling in the winter air. A shadow dismounted nearby. Silas Mc Cade came forward, his boots sinking into the drift. His hands moved to help, though his eyes lingered on her first. For a moment, nothing passed between them but the sharp scent of iron, the horse's heaving breath, and the shared work of saving a creature too stubborn to fall. Their hands brushed as they tightened the harness. Clara flinched slightly at the warmth of his touch, but she did not pull away. Neither spoke of gratitude, nor of chance, nor of why he was there at all. When the horse steadied, they stepped back together, the snow falling in slow, unbroken silence. He gave her a single nod, something measured and deliberate, before he returned to his saddle. Clara stood watching long after he had gone, her heart thundering louder than the storm. For the first time in weeks, her shame loosened its hold. For the first time in months, she felt seen without scorn. But Dry Creek was not blind. Gossip swelled like a river after thaw. By the week's end, Evelyn Carter stood at the center of the saloon, telling anyone who'd listened that Clara Mae had clawed her way toward McCade's fortune, wearing pity like a dress too big for her. The laughter rose high, clinking glasses, boots stomping. Words became weapons, and Clara's name was carved into every cruel jest. That night she entered the saloon herself, not for company, but for supplies she could not fetch elsewhere. The room stilled when she crossed the threshold, her shawl damp with snow melt, her face pale but unbowed. Dozens of eyes fell upon her, some gleaming with mockery, others with uneasy pity. Evelyn's smile curled like a blade as she spoke into the hush. Well, if it isn't the Baron's beggar bride. Laughter tore through the smoke-heavy air. Clara's throat closed, her hands trembling as she gripped the basket at her side. She would not cry here, not where they could drink her sorrow like wine. She forced herself to the counter, laid down her coins, and gathered what she came for. But the weight of every gaze bore down until her knees threatened to fold. Then the doors swung wide, spilling cold air and snowflakes across the floorboards. Silas Mc Cade entered, his presence filling the room like thunder before lightning. He moved slowly, unhurried, as though he alone controlled the rhythm of that moment. The laughter faltered, then died, leaving only the crackle of a hearth and the creak of boots shifting uneasily. His eyes swept the room before they came to rest on Clara. In a voice low but unshakable, he spoke into the silence. "You mock a woman who stands taller than the lot of you. My ranch needs a wife like her." The words struck like a hammer. The room gasped, mouths open, eyes wide. Evelyn paled, her smugness stripped clean. No one laughed now. Clara's heart pounded so violently she feared they would hear it. She could not speak, could not breathe, could not comprehend the full weight of what had just been said. Mc Cade did not wait for approval, nor for questions. He simply turned, held out his hand to Clara, and waited. The stillness stretched, fragile as glass. Every soul in the saloon leaned forward, as if the entire town's judgment hung on this one moment. Clara's fingers trembled as she set down her basket. She looked at his hand, broad and steady, and then at his face, unflinching, honest, neither pitying nor commanding. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. The touch was light, almost hesitant, but it was enough. Together they walked into the snow, leaving whispers and stares behind them. Outside, the storm had softened, flakes drifting like feathers around the lantern glow. Their boots pressed fresh tracks into the whiteness, covering the muddied ruts left by others. Each step forward erased some fragment of her shame, replaced instead by something she had not dared to feel in years, belonging. Behind them, the saloon buzzed with voices, astonishment spilling into argument, but Clara did not hear them. Beside her, Silas's silence was a shield stronger than any speech. They walked not as master and servant, not as rich and poor, but as two souls weathered by winter, choosing to face it together. At the edge of town, Jonas Reed watched from beneath the brim of his hat, a quiet smile ghosting his lips. Sheriff Pike, leaning against a post, tipped his hat as they passed, not out of duty but respect. The town might keep gossiping, might keep weighing worth in coins and dresses, but those who saw clearly knew a different truth had just been written. The snow deepened as they neared his ranch. Clara's breath came in clouds, yet she felt lighter than she had in years. For all the cold, warmth spread through her chest, steady and certain. She did not know what tomorrow held, nor how the town would treat her now, but she knew this. She was no longer walking alone, and perhaps that was enough. Later, long after lanterns dimmed and the town's laughter faded, an old voice might tell this story to those willing to listen. It would say that dignity lives not in riches, but in the quiet fire of those who refuse to bow, even when mocked, even when broken. It would whisper that the world will always find tongues to sneer, but true worth is measured only by the courage to keep walking until the right hand finds yours. If this tale has warmed you in the chill of your own winter, stay with us a while longer. More Wild West memories wait just beyond the horizon. Subscribe, so you never miss a story where hearts prove braver than the frontier itself.